welcome to Buddhist Center. Tonight, we're so lucky that once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's Source of All My Good, or Foundation of All Good Qualities, as it's translated a lot, begging for a mountain of blessings, as Pabunka Rinpoche talks about in the wonderful text that we're looking at, which is a very short commentary on the Source of All My Good. And Source of All My Good is quite unique because it contains every single path that's necessary for an individual, like me or you or anyone in the universe that isn't completely fulfilled in terms of their goals of having no more fears and having, complete bliss. If, I think all beings are interested in that. So, any of those beings that are missing fearlessness and bliss can, change their mind from whatever place their mind is at. I know where my mind is at. I can't say where your mind is at. I can only speak about where my mind is at, but I've been convinced that, my mind can transform through these stages of the path that Lord Buddha presented 2,600 years ago, from the state that it's currently in to a perfected state, to a state where there are no more fears because the afflictive obstructions are gone, and where there is no, 90 or 95% happiness. There's only 100% happiness because the obstructions to omniscience are gone. And I've been convinced because of logic and because of great teachings by Khenser Geshe Wandak and His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Geshe Gompo, and now icing on the cake with Geshe Dorje Damdu and Geshe Agala Umzila. I feel so fortunate, but I've been thoroughly convinced that I can go from the state that I'm in to the place of perfection. And the thing that we all have in common is what convinced me about that potential, and that's this mental consciousness that we possess, that even though now has adventitious defilements, even though now is sullied, has negativities, those negativities aren't the nature of our mind. They're adventitious, meaning they're additional, they're added. Our mind is in the nature of clear light and unsullied, as Dharmakirti says. There's this purity, this natural purity, because the mind is empty of inherent existence. That's the mind's peace. That's the mind's natural purity. That's the mind's clear light. The mind's emptiness of inherent existence is that emptiness that my mind possesses, your mind possesses, and the Buddha's mind possesses. We look at the Dharmakaya and we look at the natural Dharmakaya. One of the divisions of the natural Dharmakaya is the emptiness of the Buddha's mind. It's one of the actual bodies of the Dharmakaya. And that it's the emptiness, the lack of the natural stains, if you will, the lack of these kind of stains, if you will. And what are those stains? Here it's talking about inherent existence. It's meaning the lack of the inherent existence of the Buddha's Dharmakaya. So we have proliferating bodhicitta. We have a mind with adventitious defilements, but the emptiness of this mind that we have that has adventitious defilements is the same nature, is the same emptiness as the Buddha's mind, who has no adventitious defilements. And since our mind is empty of inherent existence, just like the Buddha's mind is empty of inherent existence, our mind isn't stuck in adventitious defilement state. It's only in the state of dependent origination, and that dependent origination depends on what the previous moment gives rise to in terms of the experience. And if that dependent origination only gives rise to bliss, perfection, reliability, and so forth, then we've achieved that mind of the Buddha. The Buddha isn't outside of the science of dependent origination. The Buddha can be because of dependent origination, as Nagarjuna says. If emptiness isn't possible, nothing's possible. But because emptiness is everything is possible. Emptiness is what makes everything occur. And because my mind is empty of inherent existence, it can be defiled. It can have adventitious defilements. And because the Buddha's mind is empty of inherent existence, it can be perfect. So we'll just leave it on that thinking, and let's start with the 7-point Vairocana posture to get our minds to a more comfortable state, a more reliable state, a more realistic state, a place from which we can really analyze these teachings that are really the great medicine for all beings. I mean, how many medicines are there out there that are universal medicines? And universal medicines that will cure all ills, cure all anxiety, cure all depression, cure all sadness, cure birth, aging, sickness, and death. If you had a billboard for that and it was a pill, it would certainly, be a very big seller. So here we are, and we have this information that we're about to receive that is this great medicine for all beings, this great medicine which will allow us to achieve what we innately want. We innately want to be happy. We innately want to be not scared. We have this within us. We have this within us, and we have the potential to bring our mind to that complete state of, the perfection in terms of perfecting fearlessness, and then the perfect state of perfecting, ourselves to the point where we have no obstructions to omniscience, and we have perfect bliss, perfect wisdom, perfect compassion, perfect love, perfect skillful means, perfect wisdom. So this is really important stuff that we're doing here. So we should have a really calm, realistic mind to be able to listen to it, engage in it, and really feel it, and make it into something that becomes who we are, from a personal perspective. These teachings start to saturate our minds, and these teachings sound like how our minds kind of work, as opposed to, oh, that would be great if our mind could work like that. Or, wow, it was neat that there were beings out there whose minds could have ever worked like that. Oh, these are my heroes. I can't believe that this being could have ever played guitar like that. Not realizing that if I practiced enough and I had done all of the work that that being had done, I could play guitar like that. And likewise, we can't look at it in terms of, our potential is just kind of to be interested in this sort of stuff. That's not all we can do. That's not the best that we've got. Just relying on and saying, oh, it's neat. It's almost like folklore. It's nice stories that I like to hear about beings who did great things, who had great minds, who, wouldn't it be neat if my mind could be like theirs? But they're just a separate class of mind than my class of mind. But it's someone I look up to and almost deify, and think that somehow, those great beings' minds can just rub off on mine. And I'm just kind of who I am. And it's great that there were people who were like the Einstein. I'm not like Einstein. And what's kind of incredible is that when we start to really, really pay attention to these teachings, we find out that, oh, well, Einstein is no problem. If that's what you really want to be, you just have to, do all of the exact things, create the causes and conditions to produce, that sort of result. Here we're saying Einstein as, a great being, turning into a great wise being. In this case, we want to turn into the wisest being in the universe. So we just have to, engage in the practices and create the causes for our minds to think like what we see on the paper. What we see in these texts on the Lam Rim aren't going to later just be words on paper or ideas that are out there to compare with other ideas, they'll be our ideas, because the ideas aren't Lama Tsongkhapa's ideas about what the nature of reality are. They are just what the nature of reality are, and they're what Nagarjuna's ideas are, and the Buddha Shakyamuni's ideas are about the nature of reality, and Jetsun Milarepa's ideas are about what the nature of reality are. So it's important for us to understand that the reason we get together twice a week is for us to be able to have our minds think like the books we read, and not to be brainwashed by them, to be convinced through logic and reasoning that our minds would be better off if they operated the way that someone who was who practiced the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacities mind would, or medium capacity. And now we're in the teachings for beings of great capacity. We convince ourselves that if our minds worked like the explanations of these beings and what they would be able to do and what the results of those practices would be, if we become convinced of that, then our minds start to work like that, and then we start to actually become the beings that we look up to. And it isn't something that we can't achieve. It's something that we surely can achieve, but we have to start somewhere. So let's get into the 7-point Vairakana posture, is where we're going to start tonight. Get our minds more realistic and calm. We're going to begin with the exercise of breathing in and out and counting the breath, and the front generation visualization of Buddha Shakyamuni in a static form, eye height, arm length away, about the size of our thumb, probably 2 inches or so. And we're going to imagine Buddha Shakyamuni in our mind, right in that front form, and then the breathing in and out and the counting. We're going to remain on those 4 focal objects, breathing in, breathing out, counting, and Buddha Shakyamuni. And we're just going to stay on those things. We're not going to allow our minds to get too sleepy and dull and not be clear that we're on those things, nor are we going to allow our minds to stray and be scattered and get off and excited, get off of the object of observation because of attachment or aversion or something. We're going to really, really have our introspection, make sure that the mindfulness that's holding it there is doing its job. And if there's some sort of straying, the mindfulness catches that object of observation of the breathing in and out and the counting and the Buddha Shakyamuni front generation, and brings it back to your meditation. So there's not going to be a whole lot of that goes on in the next 15 or 20 seconds. But these instructions I say over and over again. So when you're on your cushion, you'll say, okay, I got to bring my mindfulness, got to bring my focal object back. It's got to bring my focal object back. It's what happens. Okay, introspection just caught it. This is what's going on. This is how I go through the stages of shamatha. I've established a focal object. This is how I will gain a calm enough mind to be able to focus it like a laser so calmly and so stably on emptiness, and then see emptiness and cut the root of cyclic existence through a series of meditative experiences on the nature of reality that are coupled with the wind of bodhicitta, the ripening path. So so let's do some practice and then we'll go from there. We're so fortunate to have this human basis from which we can practice the Dharma. We have all the causes and conditions that are necessary. Everything's in place. The stage is set. Everything that we could possibly need, we have. All we need is effort. If we put the effort in, we have all of the texts. These things have been translated in English. We're so fortunate. These incredible beings have worked so hard to make sure that we can understand this philosophy that's so complex. We're so fortunate that we have all of these causes and conditions in our life to figure out exactly what's going to be necessary for us to be happy forever and to never, ever suffer again. We're so fortunate. We have a mind that can transform. We have a mind that can mature into the state that's just like the state of perfection that the Buddha abides in. Our individual continuum, our mental consciousness, that has no beginning and that will have no end. Since beginningless time, we've had this ignorance, we've had this non-virtue, we've had this wrong perception. But because it's wrong, it can be changed into something that's not wrong. We're so fortunate that this beginningless wrongness can end and we can achieve nirvana. We have the human basis, we have the causes and conditions, we have the teachings, we have the ears to be able to listen to the teachings, we have the eyes to be able to see the teachings and read the teachings. Teachers are around us and in our world. Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings are still here. We have so many opportunities. We just have to put the effort in. And when again will we have these opportunities? We can't be certain. We know we have them now, but we don't know when they're going to vanish because death will come and nothing can stop it. We don't know when that will be, and nothing can help us except the stuff that we're talking about tonight. But we're so fortunate because the stuff that can help us is in our lives. The things that can help us at the time of our death are right in front of us. We can see them, we can hear them. We have teachers who can explain them so well to us. We can have the wisdom arisen from hearing, and then analysis, and then meditation eventually. Because we have all of these causes and conditions. So we should rejoice and be so grateful that we have the Dharma in our lives, that Buddha Shakyamuni came into this world. Buddha Shakyamuni came into this world, and then these Nalanda Pandits cared so much about the Dharma. And then the Tibetan masters cared so much about the Dharma. They kept it so pure. We have this unbroken lineage. We should rejoice and feel so grateful. We met with a real Arya Bodhisattva. We sat at the feet of Khenser Geshe Wandak, who is the manifestation of Aryatara in a form of a simple monk. We're so fortunate we sat at the feet of a being like that and heard the Dharma, heard the teachings for beings of three capacities, heard the three principal paths, and we're given such clear instructions on them, such clear instructions that we can maneuver through those stanzas with such ease. We're so fortunate. We should really rejoice in that and understand what that word rejoicing means. Really smile and think about this opportunity that you have. Think about the fact that you know how to take the essence of this life, this human basis that you have. It's great that you have it. Great that you have the causes and conditions to become a Buddha. It's great that you have eyes that can see the text, and great that you can hear the teachings. Just absolutely great. But are you doing it? Are you making it part of what you are investing your time in? And you are. You're investing this time right now in your eventual Buddhahood. You're investing your time right now in what really matters, in learning about what really matters. It's like we're so apt to make an investment in our future when it comes to worldly things. Well, we have to think about our future. We should make an investment in this, maybe a 401k, maybe a Roth, maybe a VUL, because we'll get the life insurance with that too, or something, like we're so apt and our minds are so quick to move towards investing in what we should do. But when we look at taking the essence of this life, the real investment is investing in our spiritual monopoly, investing in that which will give rise to our true eventual real happiness and freedom from suffering. And we rejoice in the fact that we're actually doing that, not just in the fact that we have the human basis with all of this leisure, but in the fact that we're actually doing something with it. Lama Tsongkhapa, says that we should take the essence of this, leisure and opportunity that's so hard to find and easily lost, and we're doing it. We should really just rejoice in that fact. And these simple things that we can do to enhance every single experience that we have related to the Dharma anything that we can do that will make it more powerful and that will make your mind more attracted to it like a magnet in the future is a good thing. So please rejoice in these things whenever you have the opportunity to do so, because there's, billions of human beings out there that won't even consider, looking at, why do I suffer? Why, who am I? What, is there a self? Isn't there a self? Is a self-cherishing attitude a bad thing or a good thing? There's billions of beings that'll never even cross their mind, and billions of human beings who operate, as many of the great lamas say, just like animals who just go from, sleep to food, to doing whatever you need to do to get your food and sleep, your shelter. Maybe it's working and procreation, and then just doing those things until you die. And a lot of the lamas, like Pabunka Rinpoche says, is what are we doing that is different than a dog? What are we doing that's different than an animal? An animal knows how to feed itself and how to find some shelter, how to make sure it can get the means to feed itself and have, some shelter. An animal knows how to procreate. An animal knows how to have intercourse and, make young. So now what have you done that's so significantly different? What are you doing that's so significantly different than an animal? Because you have this capacity that's so incredible. You have this intelligence that is nothing like the mind of an animal who has not the ability to even say one Om Mani Padme Hum. So what are you doing? So right now you're taking the essence of this life in the highest way you possibly can. You're engaging in Dharma practice. You're engaging in something that will actually give rise to true happiness instead of the salt water happiness that's never satisfying, that is called contaminated happiness of samsara, the suffering of change. So we're so fortunate, and so it should be so delighted in the fact that we have this opportunity. Now, we'll just quickly imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni, who we had in the static position that we were thinking about, we're so incredibly fortunate to have met with the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni. We've met with all the varieties of the teachings of Sutra and Tantra and Hinayana and Mahayana and so forth. We've met with all these varieties of teachings because of Buddha Shakyamuni's kindness, because of Buddha Shakyamuni's love and compassion that he has for all sentient beings. He came here and showed us all of the perfect pathways for the varieties of all the different types of beings with the varieties of all the different types of minds. And we're so fortunate. And we should be so grateful to Buddha Shakyamuni and rejoice in the fact that we met with these teachings. Because not too many beings actually meet with these teachings. Imagine Buddha Shakyamuni, who came to this world in order to help us, in order to care for us, in order to say, hey, I have a way for you to not have to suffer. I understand this is hard. I know this is painful. I know that everything, over and over and over again can really just be awful, but I have a way out for you. And I know you love happiness, and I know that you want the highest amount of happiness, and I can show you how to do that. And I know that you, from the bottom of your heart, have this caring place. You love others, you care for others. And I know that you would want to know how to make them be pain-free and have everything in the world that is good. And I can show you how exactly to do that. And we should really smile and be so happy how many beings in the entire history have come into our world system to show us how to reach our full potential by caring for every being in the universe equally, so much that we can't bear to see them have suffering and can't bear to see them in a place that isn't full of bliss. So we're so fortunate to have a being that came into the world to show us exactly what we need to do in order to achieve that state, in order to achieve the state of complete Buddhahood by relying on those incredible minds such as renunciation and bodhicitta, which are the ripening paths, and the correct view of emptiness, which is the liberating path. And when we combine those two things together, it's like an atomic bomb that makes samsara just go away. And it not only makes samsara go away, but because of the ripening path of bodhicitta that is there and present, it makes the obstructions to omniscience to go away. It makes the being's lack of complete reliability go away as well. So Buddha Shakyamuni came to show us how exactly to achieve his state. And here we are doing it. And so we're really his purpose for coming to the world. We're really fulfilling in a way. So imagine Buddha Shakyamuni is so proud, so happy that we've decided to actually do something about our spiritual potential instead of just being stuck, running towards things we want and fighting things that we hate so much, just stuck and believing that everything's inherently existent and we're going to be ready to fight it or become attached to it at any moment. So we're fortunate. And Buddha Shakyamuni sees that we're here learning how to reverse that process, how to untie that knot, how to become unbound from cyclic existence, how to become unbound from the 8, 6, and 3 types of suffering. So Buddha Shakyamuni sees that we're here trying to become unbound, and imagine that he feels so great. Now imagine Buddha Shakyamuni's happy and is so blissful and has been containing the entire merit field. And imagine that the entire merit field now explodes into the space in front of you. You see Khensur Geshe Wandok there, smiling, so happy and radiant, so happy. We've continued these Lamrim teachings, continued the teachings. He gave the teachings on the source of all my good so many times. And he'd be so happy to know that we're continuing going over it again and again and again. He was so happy we went back to the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. And this is really a summary of everything in that text. He'd be so happy we're looking at these texts in great detail with a magnifying glass so that we can understand these things in such a way that it becomes our knowledge. It doesn't become something that we're just borrowing or thinking's neat. It becomes our knowledge. It becomes how we think. And Rinpoche came in to us to show us how to start to think like he thought, or it came to show us how to think just like Tsongkhapa, how to think just like Nagarjuna. Here's how you want to, Atisha, said, when I die, if you don't worry if you never got to meet me, just realize Bodhicitta and you'll know me, you'll know who I am. That idea at the end of Rinpoche's prayer comes from Atisha, who's saying, if you don't worry, you'll know who I am. Just realize mind that aspires to enlightenment, and your mind will be just saturated in the way that mine is. And you'll know who I am because that's who I am. And it's really amazing that we have this opportunity because of Khensur Rinpoche. I'm here sitting here able to give you a description of the stages of the path that I think tallies with what Lama Tsongkhapa presented. And I feel confident because Rinpoche was such a great teacher and I received so many teachings from him that I'm able to extract some essence with Pabonka Rinpoche's help and other great, great masters, the 7th Dalai Lama and other great, great masters' help. Extract the essence of what this great poem is talking about. So imagine Rinpoche is so happy, after just think about what I just said and imagine then Rinpoche could just for a second be here and just say, okay, you're here. I see you there. I see you there. And I see that you've continued. You aren't satisfied with just kind of knowing things. You want to learn more. I've been pushing you to do these things, and here you are. Imagine His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, imagining the previous abbot of Losa Ling, Ken Rinpoche Gen Gyatso, imagining Demalocha Rinpoche, imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu, and Gen Umzala Geshe Aga, Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin, Jeffrey Hopkins, Lamala Alan Wallace, imagining Chado Rinpoche, imagining Ani Thupten Chodron, imagining the beings of the extensive deeds lineage, passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga, and Basubandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Gunaprabha and Shakyaprabha and Lama Sarlingpa and Atisha, and imagining the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddhapalita and Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and Shantideva and Baba Vega and Chandrarashita and Kamalashila, and again imagining Atisha and Salimpa, now imagining all the beings of the lineage of blessings, the practicing blessings, imagining Vajradhara is there in this incredible merit field that you're imagining in your mind in the space in front of you, as if you could just reach your hands out and touch those beings, as if you could, bow down and they could touch your head, imagining them that real in the space in front of you, imagining now Lama Saraha and Matripa and Tilopa and Naropa and Lotsawa Marpa, and imagining Milarepa and Gampopa, all these beings in the space in front of you, and imagining Lama Atisha is there and teaching Drone Tompa, that incredible lay Lama who received the entire Lamrim tradition, and imagining the three Kadampa, the old Kadampa lineages passed down through Drone Tompa and Atisha and so forth. Imagining all the holy beings of the Nyingma Kagyu Sakya and Galup order, imagining Padmasambhava, Sakya Pandita, imagining the Karmapas, imagining Lama Tsongkhapa, imagining Kirtapje, Jelsapje, Penchen Sanandrapa, Basu Chichi Jetson, Jayan Sheba, Goncho Jimmy Wambo, Jayan Gapi Lodru, the seventh Dalai Lama. Imagining all of these holy beings are there in the space in front of you. We're so connected to these beings. We've heard teachings either directly by reading these texts by these beings, or indirectly by lamas, giving us oral commentary, because they've read these great beings' texts and they're summarizing them for us. We've been touched by every single one of these beings' wisdom, and we really rejoice in the fact and should be so grateful and just smile, a sigh of relief that we're really within the family, the lineage of pure beings that will not steer us wrong. Really rejoice in this fact, feel so grateful for this. And Jayan Rupi Dorje right there has such an impact on so many beings' minds. Just by writing a short poem can get you to understand the view of emptiness just so quickly. Imagining the highest Yoga Tantra deities, performance Tantra deities, action Tantra deities, 35 Buddhas, all of the protector deities, imagining them all in the space in front of you. Now, recognize that just like you want happiness, all sentient beings want happiness, and recognize that the only way that all sentient beings will be able to get happiness that you crave will be to hear the Dharma, to engage in the stage of the path of practice that will allow them to achieve the complete path that will lead to a complete goal. And that complete goal is complete Buddhahood. And only way a being can have the complete happiness is to become a Buddha. And the only way they can become a Buddha is by engaging in the same stages of the path to enlightenment that you need to. So we recognize that when we look at the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, that we have a disgust for all the suffering of cyclic existence. We want to get away from the 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, and 3 types of suffering. We recognize beyond a shadow of a doubt that these things are our enemies. All these types of suffering are some things that repulse us, something that we want to get away from so much. Just like when we want to get away from something so much, we want to get away from cyclic existence so badly. We become so convinced of this and recognize that all of these sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, etc., that we have to undergo, every single sentient being has to undergo. All of the loved ones, all those people that we find so near and dear to us have to undergo these same exact types of suffering. So it's really important that we recognize our own suffering so thoroughly in order to then turn that mind, as Rinpoche said, of renunciation into compassion. So that's this kind of, the power of renunciation is what creates real compassion, because that renunciation, that disgust with cyclic existence, that disgust with suffering, allows you to understand that I'm disgusted with my ignorance. I'm disgusted with this idea that everything inherently exists that gives rise to inappropriate attention, that gives rise to the afflictions, the karma, and then suffering. I'm disgusted with that. I want to definitely get out of that. That's an awful thing. And then I look to my nearest, most highest loved one, and I say, wow, that person has that same exact situation. And then I look to strangers and say, that person has that same exact situation. And then I looked at people I would call an enemy. And because I've done earlier meditations we've talked about a lot of times and established equanimity, where I would be willing to equally benefit all sentient beings, I've erased those silly terms because I've had every relationship since beginningless time with every single sentient being. So just because I'm having this kind of relationship with you in this life, be it good, bad, or indifferent, I've had different relationships with you in other lives. And I've had just as close a relationship with you, if you are considered my enemy, as I, in a previous life, as I currently have with the person I love the most right now. So we have this idea that we would equally benefit every single sentient being because of this. And we get this idea that our mind needs to become a lot bigger and a lot wiser. And if we want to become a Buddha, we have to not only want to get out for ourselves. We have to pry our mind open even wider, and want to free every single sentient being from suffering and bring them to a complete state of Buddhahood. And by making our mind bigger and bigger, our happiness can get bigger and bigger. When you have most people would say, oh, the most highest state of bliss and happiness I had was when I was this loved, or this, I had a child, or something like that. So if you could harness that feeling, that one, whatever the highest point of that one moment of feeling is, there are other things you can think of, you're smart, where you have that incredible intensity of bliss or happiness. Imagine if you could then multiply that times every single being in the universe, times every moment. And then you can kind of get an idea of how a Buddha could get to the place that a Buddha could get to, and then why it would require all sentient beings. So you start to logically see you're going to need everyone, and that everyone's equally important. Everyone's pain hurts, everyone's happiness feels good. And what they need is the same thing you need. And you're going to need them, and you're going to need to want them to achieve complete Buddhahood in a way that you'll do anything. You'll put all their needs before your own to make that happen in order for you to achieve your goals. So how do we begin to start to get bodhicitta? Practicing. So how do we practice? We imagine we're bodhisattvas, so that we start planting seeds in our minds to become bodhisattvas. So let's imagine that we bring every single sentient being here to be able to hear the teachings. All the hell hungry goes to animal, human beings, demigods, and gods. Imagining you're bringing all of them here. Now the whole entire merit field is full of bliss because all sentient beings here. There's no bias, there's no quarreling. Everybody's just here, so focused on what's next. You're here leading all sentient beings. What are you leading me to do next? There's an anticipation that all sentient beings have, and the entire merit field is there going, okay. And now we're going to recite the Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra is the pure sutra of truth. It expounds the ultimate truth of reality. It has so much power of purification, it is said. So we're going to begin with that because we know that everything we could possibly need is either explicitly or implicitly presented within this sutra. It has so much power. So without further ado, let's recite the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Let me take a sip here real quick. I was told I could only use this cup if I turned it the monkey way, monkey face out. So I'm just being mindful of that, everyone. Monkey face out, as opposed to monkey face not out. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. It makes me so happy to be able to discuss these teachings and to remember Rinpoche in the purest way. You know, I remember him in my practice every single day, but in the purest way, which is to talk about all he cared about, which was the Dharma, to talk about the Lam Rim. And you, by listening on all these different places and platforms, allow, you know, Rinpoche's presence to really be here still. Not that, you know, it's only dependent upon those things. Rinpoche had a lot of students. I get that. But by allowing me to speak the Dharma that he taught for so many years, it allows his presence to really, really be here. And when I say, oh, imagine Rinpoche is so happy and smiling and radiant, you know, Rinpoche is in the Dharmakaya form and could be emanating anywhere. Maybe he's your new postal worker, who knows, right? Rinpoche, you know, when have the Dharmakaya and you have the mind of ultimate love and compassion, you go where you're needed. You know, you have a Sambhokaya and enjoyment body that helps the Arya Bodhisattvas, and you emanate where you're needed and where you're connected. So I really feel so fortunate to be able to speak these words, because these words I know were the words that Rinpoche spoke. And I know that that's why he felt so honored to be able to talk. And that's why all he ever wanted to do is talk about the Dharma. And he would go on and on and on about the Dharma. It was because he felt so fortunate that his teachers had passed down this tradition that was really just so pure, and that he was excited to talk about it because he knew that it worked. And he knew that it had such a profound impact on him, because he saw and he was inspired by the impact that it had had on his teachers, and they were inspired by the impact that it had on their teachers. You get it, as Geshe Damdu would say, and that goes all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni, and that's why we're so blessed to have this unbroken lineage that came to us from these great masters, and we haven't had any teachers that there's anything to question about. So many people have to spend so many years and then come to find out that what they were being taught wasn't actually accurate. The person was motivated by something other than caring for their need to become a Buddha, and they spent so many years. But we're so fortunate that Rinpoche never, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama never, and Geshe Lobsang Gompo never, now Geshe Dorje Damdu never, and Geshe Aga never, Geshe Malaya Tenzin Ladra never would steer us wrong or steer us in a direction that wasn't the fastest possible way to get to Buddhahood. So the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, those I have heard. Once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One rose from that samadhi and expressed the Dharma called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Deyata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ngala jube ne jo damba ne ngoje do jo ngai do do jen ru ba ba la mai bu jin zi ne zong gan ro zo la sha ze lo aga samara da shandara samara ya be aga samara de samara. Aga samara da jandara samara ya be de ada on gate gate paragate parasangate bodhiso ababa gojo gai de bedoje she lobo doje me bodoje she wodoje dagi baje me de bejan danji she dengo yeso yere ndo ja je she wa da me don de bejan dan de wa dan don ba don jin bon son son joji taji de jan de da de le sho. We'll make a mandala offering as a request for the teaching, remembering the teacher, but also who's teaching, that'd be me, but also remember Kensher Geshe Wanda and Geshe Lobsang Gompo and now Geshe Dorje Damdu and Umzala Aga, And all of those beings, we talked about the merit field, all those beings that go all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni. So when we make this offering, think again, we're making this offering to the teacher and all those beings all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni. So important. The more we can visualize, when we look at the King of Prayers, we talk about imagining the beings, the merit field is, and as many beings as there are atoms, so we're really trying to make our minds as big as we can, as many sentient beings as we can imagine, as many beings in the merit field as we can imagine. And why are we doing it? So we have to set our motivation. We have to have this reason. We're doing this, we're setting this motivation. So we have this merit field, we have the bodhicitta field, and we're doing it in order to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So we should have this in mind, and understanding that our afflictive obstructions and our obstructions to omniscience are empty of inherent existence. We are empty of inherent existence. The mandala offering is empty of inherent existence. All the prayers we're doing are empty of inherent existence, yet they exist because they dependently originate. They exist subjectively, conventionally. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Again, the prayer I'm about to say, students say the merit I create by listening to the Dharma. I'm going to say teaching the Dharma in the refuge prayer. Prayer of refuge in bodhicitta. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Zanje Jodan Zaji Janana, Janju Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Juje Jibe Zonanji, Drola Benje, Zanje Druba Jo. Sanje Jadan Zaji Janana, Janju Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Juje Jibe Zonanji, Drola Benje, Zanje Druba Jo. Zanje Jadan Zaji Janana, Janju Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Juje Jibe Zonanji, Drola Benje, Zanje Druba Jo. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Instructions from parting from the four attachments by Sachen Kongan Nimpo. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. May everyone hear, but everyone's here. So, I mean, I'm just, saying it out loud, but we in our minds have already made that assumption because we've brought all sentient beings here. We're imagining that their pain, has stopped just for the period of time that's necessary for them to hear this teaching. So, it's important that we keep bringing back these visualizations when we're doing our practice, because they make them more powerful, because we'll eventually need to connect to all sentient beings in the universe. And the more we make our mind familiar with doing that, the more we become habituated with that, the better that it will become. And it's important that I'll get to the part on bodhicitta. Let's just get right into the source of all my good. But I want to talk about something about bodhicitta tonight that's important. But I know we're going to read the Bodhisattva vows, but I think there's something really important about bodhicitta that we should talk about, that we've talked about, but talked about and really talked about are maybe two different things. So we'll do that in a moment. Okay, so the source of all my good by Lama Tsongkhapa. Very short poem, very long meaning. If you were to really try to find, okay, so how do I extract the meaning of this? How would I find out what Lama Tsongkhapa is really talking about? Unfortunately, to do that thoroughly, it's going to require you to go to two very large books. These three in English, or this one in Tibetan right here. I don't know if you all can see that, but that's the great, these three are the great, this is the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, translated into English. We're so fortunate that we have it in 3 volumes, and then it's 1 volume in Tibetan. But then there's the great treatise on the stages of the tantric path to enlightenment. That's large like that, that also, we don't have all of it in English, I don't think yet. But for us to really know what this poem means, to extract all of it, it would require us to know what those 2 very large volumes mean, and then maybe some additional commentaries on those to kind of get to the final meaning that Lama Tsongkhapa is getting at. You'd probably get by on just the Lam Rim Chemo and the Ngarim Chemo, but really there's an intense amount of meaning in this poem, and we should never become complacent or never say, oh, the source of all my good again, oh, it's so boring. We should get excited when we look at each of these stanzas. As Jeffrey Hopkins says, is okay, you know, it's neat sometimes to just think about numbers. You know, how many things that about Buddhism in 3s are there? And just start thinking about how neat it is that you can come up with so many different 3s, so many different 4s, you know, how many 6s, how many 8s, you know, just really almost testing your own mind and seeing, you know, how quickly you can move your mind around all of these different categories. And it can excite you when you look at this text and you say, okay, this first part, Pabunka Rinpoche says the first thing that we have to do, there's 4 categories of this text. And this text is going to literally take me from the very beginning of the stages of the path to enlightenment to the final completion stage practices, and then some dedications and stuff, you know, at the end. But this text is literally going to take me, even if it isn't explicitly showing me every single detail, from the very beginning of the path that any single sentient being in the whole wide world universe is going to need if they haven't done it yet. The very beginning of the path, what you're going to need, this finding a teacher, to what you're going to need right before, when you're on the 10th Bodhisattva ground or wherever you are, right before you are going to achieve your goals of Buddhahood. You know, it's all in here, and it's amazing. And it starts with Pabunka Rinpoche saying the very root of the path, which is how to take a lama and serve him or her properly. So the first category, the source of all my good is my kind lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path. Grant me then to serve and follow him with all of my strength and reverence. Then next category is once you've taken a lama, what do you do? Now, Pabunka Rinpoche says, well, first let's talk about, some advice. And my advice is that you should take the essence of this life. So he says that Tsongkhapa is, here just giving us some advice to take the essence of, you better use what you have while you have it. So then Tsongkhapa goes on to say, bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. So we went over that so thoroughly. You have this life. It's so hard to get. The causes are hard. There's so many reasons that it's hard. The numbers of beings that are humans are so small. There's so many examples of why it's so hard to get, and you have it right now. And this thing that you have is so valuable because you have the 8 leisures. You have the Dharma in your life. You have this ability to practice. You have this potential to practice. Rejoice day and night that you have this. But just rejoicing isn't enough. Take advantage of it. You should take the essence of this thing that you have because, it's so rare, it's so valuable, and it's so easy that you can lose it. So here's the pitch. Pabunka Rinpoche is saying, Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, take the essence of this life. You better do it. You have it. You have it now. It's easy to lose. It's ever so valuable. It actually doesn't talk about easy to lose until the next thing. But then we get into the actual stages of the path. We get into actually what Lama Tsongkhapa says is what we would do to take the essence of this life. And I know that we go over this a lot, but it's important that we do that so that you are able to engage in your practice without, hands-free, book-free. You're not going to need, me talking away. You can just, easily look at this poem and say, oh, it's this means that, means this, means that, means this. And the more we talk about it, the more it becomes ingrained in your mind. And the more it becomes ingrained in your mind, the less you have to look for it in time of need. When you're needing inspiration or you're needing to really look realistically at a situation. If it's not ingrained in your mind and you have to go search it out in a book, it's not going to be very effective in the moment when you need it. And that's why we go over this stuff over and over again. So we recognize that we have this life of leisure. We should take the essence of this life. It's so valuable. From it, we can become Buddhas. We can become Buddhas in this lifetime. We should take its essence night and day. By taking its essence, what would taking its essence mean? It would be to engage in the practice of the spiritual practice called the spiritual practices for beings of three capacities. So this is how you would take the essence of this life. And hopefully you would land on the teachings for beings of great capacity that would allow you to become a complete Buddha, because that's the goal, is to become a Buddha. It's really one vehicle at the end of the day that allows all sentient beings, even though Buddha taught a lot of different stuff, at the end of the day, Buddha was teaching everything Buddha was teaching in order for every being to eventually become Buddhas. So it's one vehicle at the end of the day. Then we get into the small scope. Bless me, my body and life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs, the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. So here, first Lama Tsongkhapa says, you've got this thing. It's so great. You should be psyched. You should be so happy. Take its essence night and day. You're in this mode where you're so happy. But guess what? You're going to die. And the only thing that's going to help you when you die is, is the stuff that you did related to taking its essence night and day. So Tsongkhapa is relating it back to the previous thing, saying, you should take its essence, and guess what? You're going to die. So you really should take its essence, because what I mean by taking its essence means to engage in the practices of the beings of small, medium, and great capacity. That's what I mean. That's what I mean if Tsongkhapa is talking. I mean, that's what's taking its essence is. And if you're going to die, and the only thing that will follow are the things that you've done, the white and black, death will come, nothing can stop you. You don't know when you're going to die. And the only thing that can help you is the Dharma. You should try to take the essence right now, like this second, while there's time. And start by abandoning all non-virtue and engaging in only virtuous deeds. Trying to start with the 10 non-virtues, abandoning the 10 non-virtues, engaging in those ethical behaviors, and then try to expand your virtue to the point where you can engage in the among the virtues that are spoken about in this commentary, such as the individual liberation vows, the bodhisattva vows, and the tantric vows. Keep it moving. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. So here, I'll keep going. Grant me that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teachings. So those next two stanzas that we read are dealing with the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity that show us how to achieve a complete Buddhahood. So the first stanza that gets into the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity say, hey, you better get moving. You could die and be reborn in the lower realms of cyclic existence. You better engage in practices that will make it so you have a good next life. Now we're getting into, hey, that good next life that you're pointing at isn't so good. It could be called high status, but it isn't so high. Let me tell you why high status in cyclic existence isn't so high, because it's plagued by, among the 8, 6, and 3 types of suffering, at least the pervasive compounded suffering. No matter where you are in cyclic existence, you have to endure that suffering. So hey, this high status I talked about earlier isn't so high. It's higher than what you're probably going to get if you don't do this, but it's not really high because it's plagued with these types of suffering, at least that pervasive compounded suffering that forces you again and again and again into a contaminated set of aggregates, having to have suffering of mind and body, and having no control over that situation. Now having no freedom over that situation. And the Buddha said, lack of freedom is misery. So here, this next section tells us how to get rid of all misery altogether, all fears altogether, by practicing the three highest higher trainings, by getting our ethics clean enough that our mind could then calm down enough, because we have a clear mind, we have a clear conscience, if you will, in a simpler way. Now my mind could calm down. And if my mind's calm enough, then I can look at the nature of reality and cut the root of cyclic existence. So I need the three highest higher trainings, which is an ethical behavior in the Vinaya basket, which is a calmer mind we find in the Sutra basket, and a very wise, a very intellectually peaked out mind that we find in the Abhidharma basket. So I need to combine those things in order to cut the root of cyclic existence, to achieve the abiding nirvana that the Buddha promised I could have at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, at the Four Noble Truths in Varanasi, India, and Sarnath. So here we find all of that being presented in these stanzas, but we went over that in detail before, so I won't go into much detail about it. But we find the presentation of the Four Noble Truths and the two cause and effect relationships within the two Four Noble Truths, of the cause and effect relationship between the truth of suffering and origin of suffering, origin giving rise to the truth of suffering, and the cause and effect relationship between the truth of cessation of suffering and truth of path, path giving rise to that cessation, to giving rise to that chance that we have to remove the origin of suffering, and then we no longer have suffering. We have the absence of suffering by relying on a path that gives rise to that experience, that gives rise to that state, if you will, which is a state which is an absence of suffering, because there's an absence of that which gives rise to it. So we learn about this in this section on the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and the way that we go about getting rid of that origin of suffering, that second noble truth, is by practicing the three highest higher trainings, which become kind of the strong body, arm, and sword that could cut the root of something. When we combine these three things of ethics, concentration, and wisdom, we're able to cut the root of cyclic existence. And the medium scope shows us exactly how to do that. And we want to do that because we understand the first noble truth so clearly. We understand the 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, and 3 types of suffering so clearly, that all we want to do night and day is figure out how to get rid of that which gives rise to those awful experiences, that gives rise to those disgusting states. Day and night, we want to figure out how to get rid of those disgusting states. So day and night, we renounce that which gives rise to it, the self-grasping ignorance. So that's what we get to, hopefully. And the only way we can get rid of the self-grasping ignorance, is to get our mind calm enough to look at its antidote. So then I have slipped, and now we get into the great scope. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see every living being, everyone my own mother has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for my enlightenment, to take on myself the task for freeing them all. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I'm not well trained in the 3 moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. So now we're into the Bodhicitta. So we have aspiring Bodhicitta and engaged Bodhicitta. We studied that when we looked at Panchen Sanadrapa's general meaning of perfection, when we went over so clearly the basis, cause, nature, divisions, and benefits. If you all remember, can kind of think of those categories. But what I'd like to do right now is just read a few stanzas from Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, from the first chapter related to bodhicitta, just to break things up a little bit. And then we'll go back at this stanza and we'll see where we end up. Okay, so the benefits of the awakening mind. So here we know that we've arrived at the great scope. We know that the only entrance to the Mahayana is bodhicitta. The only way we become a bodhisattva is if we get bodhicitta. The only way we can get bodhicitta is if we have renunciation. The only way we can get renunciation in its full way is to get the partial renunciation of the small scope, where we want to renounce the lower realms of cyclic existence. So we see these are all the building blocks that get us to bodhicitta. But now we recognize that we hate the 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, 3 types of suffering. We love people in our lives, and we wish they didn't have those types of suffering, and we expanded eventually to every single type of sentient being. And it's really important, and what I wanted to talk about tonight, so I better do it before I run out of time, is that when we're doing this practice, and I know I've mentioned this before, but maybe only a few times, and Kamala Shila says it's so important that when we're doing any of these practices that bring about bodhicitta. So we know that there's the bodhicitta practices passed down from the extensive deeds lineage from Maitreya to Asanga, where we have the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So we have the pre-step of equanimity, and then we have recognizing all sentient beings are our mothers, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, great compassion, the extraordinary attitude or altruism, and then bodhicitta, the result. So 6 causes, 1 result, but 1 pre-step that's not included in the 7, which is equanimity. So it's really important that when we're doing that practice, for instance, we'll look at that lineage. The other lineage, of course, is lineage of the profound view passed down from Buddha to Manjushri and Nagarjuna, and eventually to Shantideva, the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. And this advice from Kamala Shila would be going at all of these practices. So it would be a common advice to all of them. But he says that when we're doing our meditations, we shouldn't be doing them in a general way. We should be using real participants. I see the word participants. So the people should be actual beings that we know. And when we're doing, for instance, we're remembering all sentient beings as our mothers, or we're remembering a different being. We can remember all sentient beings as our brothers, our sisters, our fathers, someone who's near and dear, someone who's taking care of us in our most vulnerable state. So you can start with whoever that being is, whoever that most loving, caring person is. And then you remember that they did the same thing for you in a previous life. So you remember that they were just as kind to you in a previous life. Now they're just kind of like a replica in a way of their kindness. Now so in a previous life, they were your mother, they were your brother, they were your sister, they took care of you when they were most vulnerable. So you're beginning with an actual person who you care about so much, and then you're making it bigger, and you're making it bigger, and you're making it bigger. So you're saying, okay, well, my neighbor that I really like so much, we'll call him Bob. My neighbor's name's not Bob, by the way. So my neighbor Bob, who I like so much, in previous lives, I like Bob now a lot. He's a good guy. But what if I could think about Bob in a way that I think about the person who takes care of me when I'm most vulnerable? Because Bob took care of me when I was most vulnerable. Is it making sense? So you're getting real beings involved that are the participants of your meditation. If you're doing all sentient beings are my mother, or you're doing equanimity on friends, enemies, and neutrals. But let's just keep it real focused here. Let's just talk about all sentient beings have been my mother or my brother or my sister, etc. So then you think about, another friend that you have and another friend. So you get to all the friends, all the closest people that you possibly can get done with in your meditation. And you have, all of these beings here that you're meditating on. So you're really starting to feel so connected to these beings in such a more heightened way. And you have objects of observation that can actually, energize your meditation that you can use. And now you can, once you've exhausted all possibilities, there's those strangers out there that you move on to next. Because Lama Tsongkhapa says when we do these meditations, In this case, we start with the loved ones, then we move to neutral, then we move to enemies. So then we think about strangers. You know who some of those strangers are. I can close my eyes and think about some of those people. The person who gives me my cheese at the deli, I don't know their name. I can picture him right now, though, exactly who that is. You know, the person who I see sometimes walking on the street at the end of our street. I can picture, I don't know their name, you know, the person that works at the flower shop we sometimes go into. I think she may even own it. I don't know her name, but I can start to think about all these other beings in that same kind of powerful way that I was able to look at the closest person that I have to me and see that they are a replica of love. They are just another version of the love they previously showed me. And they took care of me so much before, just like they take care of me now. And these strangers did exactly the same thing, did exactly what this loved one is doing for me now, what this person would do for me now when I'm most vulnerable. They did that exactly that same thing for me. So it starts to intensify my, ability to get to the point where I would want to free every sentient being from suffering and the causes of suffering, and put my foot down and say, I'm going to do it. It intensifies it because I'm changing my perspective. I'm changing normally I'm only have this magnetic thing going on to people that I love and care about. In this life, I'm only really connected. I'm feeling to that in that strong way. So I'm so limited in my love and compassion. It's a lot of attachment, but not only does my love and compassion grow by doing this kind of exercise, but my attachment lessens because I'm able to see things in a bigger perspective and not be so bound to my appearances of what my self-centered attitude like. So we're trying to chop the self-centered attitude up a little bit, and the way that happens is by loosening its grips little by little, so that we do this by walking through the supermarket, as I've talked about before, and seeing a stranger and saying, wow, relating it to, what we think of as the most, kind, altruistic act that was done for us, the most loving, caring act that was done for us, and know that person that's just walking by me, did exactly those same things for me. And I start to really be motivated to help. And then we move on to those who we don't particularly care for, who rub us the wrong way. And we see that, just like our friends and our strangers, I've had these same exact relationships with them. So now you've got all of these friends and all of these strangers in this bucket, in this field around you, or whatever, however you're imagining it, whatever your meditation, if they're in front of you or around you or in all directions. You can do it so many different ways. You have this equal feeling of wow, almost enamored by, wow, they've done so much for me. And you have that sense of gratitude. You have that for now all of these beings who are not only your friends, but are your strangers too. And now you move on to the hardest one. And this is enemies, people who rub you the wrong way. But you think in the same way you do about your friends and strangers, and see that, oh my, in previous life, they took care of me when I was so vulnerable. And right now they're under the sway of their delusions. They're like crazed by the afflictions, and they're acting in a way that's aggressive or negative from their side. Yes, that may be going on. I will accept the conventional reality that there is maybe something going on there that's aggressive, oppressive, wrong, unfair. But I also understand that being previously cared for me so much. And if they knew who I was then, and they could feel like that again, they wouldn't be saying any of those things. They've just forgotten as well that they love me, just like I've forgotten that I love them. So I'm trying to remember this love that I share with all sentient beings. We have all loved each other, and I'm just trying to remember that, so I have less of a tight mind, so that my mind becomes more and more expanded and has the ability to really do these things that seem so silly to us about, emanating bodies to be able to help beings, but really could be done. So we think about this relationship that we've had with all sentient beings, and we see these beings that have been our kind mothers, kind brothers, kind sisters that are maybe affecting us in a negative way, as having had an outburst, having a crazed moment where they just can't remember who we are. We don't remember who they are. So do we want to remain part of the ignorant equation, or do we want to remember who they are, remember they've been so kind, see that they're under the influence of delusion and ignorance, and understand that we've harmed them in previous lives so badly? And it starts to make our perspective a lot different. We start to see that, oh, they've all been my mother. And then all of a sudden, all beings are in this place with you. All sentient beings are around you. And all sentient beings are an object of observation of this thought that you've all been my mother, my brother, my sister, the person who I love so much. Every single one of you, I've had that relationship with. So now you can add in other beings you don't know at all. You can fill it in. You can call them neutrals or strangers. But you can just imagine the rest of them, they're there. But you can always make more your meditation bigger and bigger. You know, you see more people on the street, and your mind, you're going to be surprised. If you get invested in this meditation and you do this meditation regularly, I promise you, you'll be shocked that in 10 minutes, how many sentient beings you can go through, how many sentient beings you could actually take on the suffering of and give happiness to, or how many sentient beings you could analyze as having been your mother, brother, sister, friends, enemy, you know, neutrals all get erased. You'd equally want to benefit all of them. You equally see them as, you know, beings that have been your mothers, brothers, sisters, have been your wives, have been your husbands. You see them all as having had these relationships and having been so kind to you and having, you know, this mind that wants to repay their kindness so bad. You see how this would all start to work when your meditation gets big enough. And that's what I just want to always reinforce, that don't be satisfied with just some stagnant kind of meditation that you go through because the Lama told you had to read this text and that text every single day. So I read this and then I read that and I read it as fast as I possibly can because I got stuff to do. But if I read it as fast as I possibly can and I do it because the Lama told me to do it every single day, somehow that's going to make me a Buddha real quick. And that's just not the case. Unless you invest in feeling this material, unless you really, really take your time to stop. What did that mean? What's this thing that I'm meditating on? What am I doing right now? I'm meditating. Who's meditating? Where is the me that's meditating? What's the reason I'm meditating? Do I want to get out of cyclic existence? What is cyclic existence? Do I want you to get out of cyclic existence? Why would I want to do that? It's really important that we start to get to know what these things are. Respectfully, the benefits of the awakening mind. Respectfully, I prostrate myself to the Sugatas who are endowed with the Dharmakaya, as well as their noble sons, and to all who are worthy of veneration. Here I will explain how to engage in the vows of the Buddha's sons, the meaning of which I have condensed in accordance with the scriptures. There is nothing here that has not been explained before, and I have no skill in the art of rhetoric. Therefore, lacking any intention to benefit others, I will write this in order to acquaint it with my mind. For due to acquaintance with what is wholesome, the force of my faith may for a short while increase because of these words. If, however, these words are seen by others equal in fortune to myself, it may be meaningful for them. Leisure and endowment are very hard to find, and since they accomplish what is meaningful for man or woman, if I do not take advantage of them now, how will such a perfect opportunity come about again? Just as a flash of lightning on a dark, cloudy night for an instant brilliantly illuminates all, likewise in this world, through the might of the Buddha, a wholesome thought rarely and briefly appears. Hence, virtue is perpetually feeble, the great strength of evil being extremely intense, and except for a fully awakened mind, by what other virtue will it be overcome? All the Buddhas who have contemplated for many eons have seen it to be beneficial, for by it the limitless masses of beings will quickly attain the supreme state of bliss. Those who wish to destroy the many sorrows of their conditioned existence, those who wish all beings to experience a multitude of joys, and those who wish to experience such happiness should never forsake the awakening mind. The moment an awakening mind arises in those fettered and weak in the jail of cyclic existence, They will be named a son of the Sugatas. That means Bodhisattva, and will be revered by men and gods of the world. It is like the supreme gold-making elixir, for it transforms the unclean body we have taken into the priceless jewel of a Buddha form. Therefore, firmly seize this awakening mind, since the limitless mind of the soul guide of the world has, upon thorough investigation, seen its preciousness. All beings wishing to be free from worldly abodes should firmly take hold of this precious awakening mind. All the virtues are like the plantain tree. For after bearing fruit, they simply perish. But the perennial tree of the awakening mind unceasingly bears fruit and thereby flourishes without end. So we know that the awakening mind, we know that the compassion is what makes the manifestation of the emanation bodies and the enjoyment bodies occur for the sake of all sentient beings. Like entrusting myself to a brave man when greatly afraid, by entrusting myself to this awakening mind, I shall be swiftly liberated, even if I have committed extremely unbearable evils. When then do the conscientious not devote themselves to this? Just like the fire at the end of an age, it instantly consumes all great evil. It is unfathomable advantages were taught to the disciples Sudana by the wise Lord Maitreya. In brief, the awakening mind should be understood to be of two types: the mind that aspires to awakening, aspiring bodhicitta, and the mind that ventures to do so, engaged bodhicitta, as is understood by the distinction between actually aspiring to go and actually going. So the wise understand in turn the distinction between these two. Although great fruits occur in cyclic existence from the mind that aspires to awaken, an uninterrupted flow of merit does not ensue as it does with the venturing mind. And for him who has perfectly seized this mind with the thought never to turn away from totally liberating the infinite forms of life, from that time hence, even while asleep or unconcerned, a force of merit equal to the sky will perpetually increase. So we see the benefits of the bodhicitta there spelled out by Shantideva, and we see this the kind of differentiation made between aspiring bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta. And we know that Pabunka Rinpoche here is talking about, in the first verse that deals with the teaching shared in common with beings of great capacity, aspiring bodhicitta, which we've gone over, those two lineages of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to, and bodhicitta, and the equalizing, exchanging soap with others practice for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta. So we've gone over those in great detail, and now we're on the bodhisattva vow, and we're on the 3 moralities, and all I'm going to do today about that is just read 1 or 2 of the bodhisattva vows, just because I said I would read the bodhisattva vows. So I'm going to fulfill my commitment, but I'm only going to read 1 or 2 of them because we just don't have time to get into any more than that tonight. But we will, it's not a rush, but I want to make sure that we go over this stuff in such great detail that it really is hammered into your mind to understand it, because that's really the way to do it. So we're dealing, it says, if I do not engage in the 3 moralities, I can't become a Buddha, right? It's, if I'm not trained in the 3 moralities, I cannot become a Buddha, and grant me a fierce resolve to master the bodhisattva vows. So the 3 moralities being the morality in terms of gathering virtue, keeping oneself from committing wrong, and then the morality of collecting goodness, and the morality that acts for every single sentient being. So the morality of first type morality has vows within it and virtues within it, common virtues that are common to everyone, like the 10 non-virtues and stuff, and then specific virtues like the Pradamoksha vows, the Bodhisattva vows, and the Tantric vows. So we went over the Pradamoksha vows in a previous class. I'll probably in the next class go over them again a little bit more in detail, because I planned on doing it tonight, but I just, my mouth just runs sometimes. And I don't follow through with what my mind, had in store for this evening in its full way. So there are 18 root and 46 secondary bodhisattva vows. Okay. So I know we have about a minute left. So I'm just going to read the first and second bodhisattva vow of the root vows, and for auspicious reasons. So we'll leave off there so that we know that next week we're going to, look at the bodhisattva vows, and we're definitely going to do it. So the first bodhisattva vow among the 18 root vows is praising yourself and belittling others. So this is something you're not going to do. You shouldn't do. Praising yourself and belittling others because of your attachment to receive offerings, being respected and venerated as a teacher, and gaining profit in general. So putting others down to look better than them, to try to get something, basically. Criticizing others to try to get something. Number 2, not giving material aid or teaching the Dharma to those who are pained with suffering and without a protector, because you are under the influence of miserliness and wanting to amass knowledge for yourself alone. So not teaching when you are able to engage in generosity, not engaging in it, but the Dharma generosity is a focus here, and helping beings in the ultimate ways by teaching Dharma. So not being stingy with the Dharma. And then number 3, not listening to someone who has previously offended you, but who declares his or her offense and begs forgiveness and holds a grudge against them. So here's a tough one. Someone says they're sorry. They've done something horrendous. Now they say they're sorry. And if you have a grudge, you're breaking the bodhisattva vow. So we see how a bodhisattva's mind works. A bodhisattva's mind doesn't do these things. The bodhisattva keeps these vows very much, tight. And our minds just don't have the ability to do so. Why? They're not calm enough. We haven't gotten them calm enough. We aren't ethical enough. So we have to have the ethics that are the foundation of the bodhisattva vow to really be able to keep a bodhisattva vow. And we have to have bodhicitta to actually get a bodhisattva vow. So if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Kala, she's a funny dog, huh? She likes to come to teachings, I guess. She's a Dharma dog. Yeah, she's like the dogs in Dharamsala that walk around the temple. Everyone says anyway. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. May Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings remain in this world until samsara ends, until everybody's a complete Buddha. May we always be protected by Palden Lama, who's our protector deity. Jorama 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 Jagala Rama Jadajan Jorama Jong Jorama 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 Jagala Rama Jadajan Jorama 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 Jagala Rama Jadajan Jorama 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 Jagala Rama Jorama 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 Jagala Rama Jadajan Jorama 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 Jagala Rama Jadajan Jorama 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 Junjo Galara Jemo Ramo Jadajan Jorama Jong. Any mistakes that I've made may they be purified by this mantra of Vajrasattva. Imagining Vajrasattva in the space in front of you is inseparable from your Lama. Inseparable in my case, I'm imagining from Kensur Geshe Wandak, inseparable from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And imagine Vajrasattva is raining white light rays that are turning into white ohms and purifying your body, red light rays and nectars that are turning into red ahs and purifying your speech and all sentient beings' speech, and blue light rays and nectars that are showering down and turning into blue homes and purifying yours and all sentient beings' mind. So yours and all sentient beings' body, speech, and mind are purified by this mantra, imagining white light rays and nectars, red light rays and nectars, and blue light rays and nectars. Om Benza Sato Samaya Manu Balaya Benza Sato Zeno Badishta Dida Meva Vazuto Gaya Meva Subokaya Meva Anuradu Meva Zavazidi Mebra Zava Kama Suchime Kitam Shriyam Guru Hom Ha Ha Ho Bhagavan Zavatata Gata Benza Mame Moka Benza Bava Maha Samaya Sapa Ahom Be. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the Hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by the Conqueror Sutra first the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. And now I'll say a long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We're so fortunate to have this incredible being in our world who emanates love, radiates love and compassion. And the correct view of emptiness is always on the tip of his tongue. We're so fortunate, so rare to ever have a being like that in any world. And we have the Buddha of compassion right here, manifesting as a simple monk. So let's please pray that His Holiness stays in our world for much, much, much longer and continues to share with us this pure Dharma that he shares and continues to just be a light for the world of love and compassion. So important that we pray for His Holiness the Dalai Lama's long life. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara. Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. Now we'll do the prayer of supplication to Khenso Rinpoche. And I want to thank all of you for coming tonight and allowing me to share the Dharma and listening to Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings and listening to the only medicine that we can take that will allow us to get rid of what causes all of our problems, not what causes some of our problems, what causes all of our problems. This is the great, panacea for all beings, the great medicine for all beings. So this is called, this was written by me, and it's a supplication to Khenso Geshe Wandak, and it's called A Complex Yogi Poses as a Simple Monk. Homage to Khenso Geshe Wandak, our precious spiritual friend, who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible, to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water and bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music, purified by Om Ahom. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling jewels is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you who placed the complete path to enlightenment, to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us to never be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. Now the sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. Now the Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. Sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha, Gautama, I pay homage. And that's the ending verse of the Nagarjuna's Madhyamika Karika. Hope everybody has a great next couple of days before we all see each other again. And please practice this Dharma. Things that we talk about, make them part of your sitting practice. And, hopefully we can all quickly get rid of these afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you. Did you have a question, Priscilla? No. Oh, thank you so much for coming on and saying good night. I appreciate all of you, and yeah, you mean a lot to me. Bye-bye.